You'll regret this, my sister screamed after I refused to lend her my car. I thought she was bluffing, but the next day, she took it without asking. A few hours later, the police called. I woke up groggy, the kind of tired that lingers even after a full night's sleep. Something felt off, though. A strange emptiness. I sat up and rubbed my eyes, staring out the window. That's when I noticed it. My car was gone. For a moment, my brain scrambled for a logical explanation. Did I park it somewhere else? Did I forget that I loaned it out? But no, I knew exactly where I had left it last night. And I knew exactly who had taken it. Lauren. I threw off the covers and bolted to my phone, scrolling through the notifications. Nothing from her. No apology. No explanation. Just silence. But I wasn't really surprised. Because this wasn't the first time Lauren had done something like this. Not by a long shot. Last night, we had fought. A real, screaming match, one of many over the years. She wanted my car. I said no. She had totaled her last one, and I wasn't about to risk mine meeting the same fate. When I stood my ground, she lost it, shouting, throwing her hands in the air, telling me I'd regret it. I should have known that wasn't an empty threat. I grabbed my keys, only to remember I didn't have a car to drive. My stomach tightened. A sinking feeling settled over me, one that told me this was only the beginning. Then my phone rang. The second I saw the number, my heart pounded in my ears. It was the police. I hesitated for a moment before answering, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Hello? My voice came out strained. Is this Mark Reynolds? A firm voice asked. Yes. This is Officer Grant with the Springfield Police Department. We have reason to believe your vehicle was involved in an accident this morning. Are you the owner of a silver 2019 Honda Accord? I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. Yes, I managed. What happened? Where is it? There was a pause, as if the officer was choosing his words carefully. The driver was involved in a collision on Willow Creek Road. She's uninjured, but the vehicle. I closed my eyes, already knowing what was coming. It's totaled, sir. I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair. And the driver? My sister, Lauren, was she arrested? She claimed she had permission to drive the vehicle, the officer said slowly. Since there were no signs of forced entry, and the keys were in her possession, it's a bit complicated. I nearly dropped the phone. She stole my car, I snapped. I never gave her permission. There was another pause. Would you be willing to come down to the station to discuss this? I didn't need to think twice. I'm on my way. Except, I wasn't. Because thanks to my sister, I no longer had a car. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had to call a rideshare to get to the police station because my own car was currently a wreck thanks to Lauren. As I sat in the back seat, gripping my phone, I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me. This was classic Lauren. She had always been reckless, always pushing boundaries, always assuming she could do whatever she wanted without consequences. Growing up, she was the golden child. The one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. She threw tantrums as a kid and got whatever she wanted. When she wrecked her first car in college, my parents bought her another. When she failed out of her first year, they pulled strings, made calls, and somehow got her into another school. And now, she had stolen my car, wrecked it, and had the audacity to lie about it. I clenched my fists. Not this time. By the time I arrived at the station, I was fuming. The officer at the front desk directed me to a small waiting area, where I spotted Lauren sitting on a plastic chair, arms crossed, scowling like a teenager who had been grounded. She didn't even look the least bit sorry. Seriously, Lauren? I snapped the moment I saw her. You stole my car and totaled it? She rolled her eyes. Oh, relax, Mark. It's just a car. Insurance will cover it. Insurance? I let out a short, humorless laugh. You weren't even insured to drive it. You know what that means, right? She waved a hand dismissively. It's not that big of a deal. Besides, I told them you let me borrow it. My stomach dropped. What? Yeah. She shrugged, as if she had just casually mentioned the weather. I told the cops you gave me the keys. That it was an emergency, and you told me I could take it. I saw red. You lied to the police? I hissed. Lauren, do you have any idea what you've done? Before she could answer, a door opened, and a uniformed officer stepped out. Mark Reynolds? I nodded, forcing myself to take a deep breath before following him into a small interrogation room. He gestured for me to sit. Let's go over what happened, the officer said, placing a notepad in front of him. Your sister claims you allowed her to take the vehicle. She's lying. My voice was sharp, no hesitation. Last night, she asked to borrow it, and I told her no. She got mad, stormed out of my house, and then this morning, my car was gone. I didn't even know she had it until you called. The officer nodded, jotting something down. And you're sure you never gave her permission? Absolutely. Do you have any proof? The question threw me for a second. Proof? Text messages, emails, anything that shows you told her no? I blinked. My gut told me Lauren hadn't planned this out too well, but suddenly I realized something. The fight we had last night, it was in person. No texts. No voicemails. No written proof that I had denied her request. Lauren knew that. That's why she was so confident. My heart pounded. I had to think fast. Then it hit me. I have a security camera, I said suddenly. It's facing my driveway. It should have recorded her stealing the car. The officer's eyebrows lifted slightly. That could be very helpful. If you can get us that footage, we might have enough evidence to pursue charges. Pursue charges. The words hung in the air between us, and for the first time, I realized what this meant. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. Lauren hadn't just taken my car, she had committed a crime. And I was about to make sure she faced the consequences for it. I left the police station feeling a strange mix of anger and determination. Lauren thought she could lie her way out of this like she always did, but this time, I had proof. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The moment I got home, I went straight to my laptop and pulled up the security footage from my driveway. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the recordings from last night. It didn't take long to find exactly what I needed. There she was, Lauren, walking up to my car in the early hours of the morning, looking around to make sure no one was watching. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't in distress. She was grinning. Then she pulled something from her pocket. My spare key. My blood boiled. She had planned this. She must have swiped my spare key from my house the night before when we were arguing. I watched as she got into the car, started it up like she owned the thing, and drove off into the night. Clear as day. I copied the footage onto a USB drive and headed straight back to the police station. When I arrived, I was immediately directed to Officer Grant, the same officer who had taken my statement earlier. I have something for you, I said, handing him the USB drive. He plugged it in, fast-forwarding through the footage until he saw Lauren sneaking into my car. We both watched in silence as she drove away, looking way too pleased with herself. Well, Officer Grant said, sitting back in his chair. That definitely changes things. I folded my arms. So what happens now? He sighed. With this footage, we have enough evidence to classify this as vehicle theft. It's up to you if you want to press charges. I hesitated for only a second. This was my sister. Family. But then I remembered all the times Lauren had lied, manipulated, and dodged responsibility. She stole my car. She wrecked it. She lied to the police. And now, I was the one left dealing with the consequences. I met Officer Grant's gaze. Press the charges. He nodded. We'll move forward with the process. She'll be formally charged and brought in. As I walked out of the station, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. For once, Lauren wasn't going to talk her way out of this. And she was about to realize that actions have consequences. The call came later that evening. I had just sat down, still exhausted from the day's events, when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Mom. Of course. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but I knew she wouldn't stop calling. With a sigh, I picked up. Mark. My mother's voice was already frantic. What is this nonsense? Why am I getting a call from the police saying Lauren is being arrested? What did you do? I pinched the bridge of my nose. I didn't do anything, Mom. Lauren stole my car, crashed it, and lied to the police about it. Now she's facing the consequences of her own actions. There was a sharp inhale. You're pressing charges? Against your own sister? That's right. Mark, don't be ridiculous. She's family. You don't do this to family. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, really? Because Lauren didn't seem too concerned about family when she stole from me. When she ruined my car. When she tried to get me into legal trouble by lying to the cops. But now that she's facing actual consequences, I'm supposed to pretend it didn't happen. She made a mistake. My mom said, her voice dropping into that familiar pleading tone. She wasn't thinking straight. You know how she is. That's exactly the problem. I interrupted. She's always been like this. And you've always defended her. You never make her take responsibility. That's why she thinks she can do whatever she wants. But not this time. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When my mother spoke again, her voice was quieter. Mark, if you do this, you could ruin her life. I clenched my jaw. She already ruined mine. I hung up. The next morning, I got the text from Officer Grant. We've taken Lauren into custody. She's being processed now. We'll keep you updated. I exhaled slowly. This was really happening. A few hours later, my phone buzzed again, this time, an unknown number. I had a feeling I knew who it was. I answered, and sure enough, Lauren's voice came through. Mark, she said, her tone much different now, no arrogance, no attitude. Just panic. You have to get me out of here. I leaned back in my chair. Why would I do that? Her voice cracked. Mark, please. This place is awful. They put me in handcuffs. There are actual criminals here. I can't be here. You don't understand. Oh no, I understand perfectly. I said. You're learning what happens when you steal someone's car and lie to the police. Actions have consequences. She let out a shaky breath. Come on. I know I screwed up. But you're my brother. You can't really be okay with me sitting in jail. I was silent for a long moment. Then I said, You remember what you said to me last night? When I confronted you about taking my car? What? She said, confused. I repeated her words back to her. Relax, Mark. It's just a car. The line went dead silent. Enjoy your time in jail, Lauren, I said. Then I hung up. For the first time in years, I felt like I had finally won. For the first time in her life, Lauren couldn't talk her way out of trouble. The next morning, I got another call, this time from my dad. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the best of me. Mark, he said, his voice tight. Enough is enough. Drop the charges. No. He sighed heavily. Look, I get that you're upset, but jail? Come on. She's your sister. She's a criminal. She's family. I clenched my jaw. Then maybe family should have taught her not to steal. Silence. Then, his voice hardened. You're making a mistake. You'll regret this. I laughed coldly. Funny. That's exactly what she said before she stole my car. Then I hung up. This time, I wasn't backing down. I expected the calls from my parents. I expected the guilt trips. What I didn't expect was how fast the news spread. By the afternoon, I started getting texts from extended family, cousins, aunts, even an uncle I hadn't spoken to in years. Mark, is it true you had Lauren arrested? Family doesn't do this to each other. Dude, it's just a car. You're going too far. I ignored most of them. But then I got a message from my cousin Rachel. Good for you. She's needed a wake-up call for years. I smirked. At least someone got it. But Lauren wasn't done trying to manipulate the situation. That evening, my mom called again, her voice low and controlled. "She's being released on bail," she said. "Her arraignment is in a few days." I raised an eyebrow. "And who paid for that?" Silence. I already knew the answer. "My parents bailed her out." I shook my head. "You really don't see the problem, do you? She stole my car. Lied to the police. And you're still cleaning up her mess. She's learned her lesson." My mom insisted. I almost laughed. "No, she hasn't. Because every time she screws up, you two are right there to save her. She's your sister," my mom said again, like that was supposed to excuse everything. "She's a liar and a thief." I shot back. "And guess what? I'm taking her to court. She's paying for every cent of what she destroyed." I hung up before she could respond. They thought this was over. They had no idea what was coming next. Lauren wasn't used to consequences. She thought that since our parents bailed her out, everything would go back to normal. That I'd cool off, insurance would handle everything, and she'd walk away with nothing more than an annoying story to tell. She was dead wrong. The moment I filed a civil lawsuit against her, everything changed. She was being charged criminally for vehicle theft, but I wanted more than just legal consequences. I wanted her to pay for the damages. The car was totaled, and because she wasn't insured to drive it, my insurance company refused to cover a cent. That meant I was out thousands of dollars. And I was getting every penny back. Lauren didn't take it seriously at first. She showed up to the small claims court hearing looking annoyed, like this was some kind of inconvenience. She barely even glanced at me. Then the judge started talking. The moment it became clear that I had security footage of her stealing my car, her attitude shifted. She looked panicked. Her lawyer, some cheap, barely competent guy my parents must have hired, tried to argue that it was just a misunderstanding, and that she thought she had permission. The judge wasn't buying it. "The footage clearly shows Ms. Reynolds entering the vehicle without consent," the judge said, flipping through the paperwork. "Furthermore, given her history with reckless driving, the plaintiff's refusal to lend her the car is reasonable." Lauren's face went pale. For the first time in her life, she wasn't being coddled. She wasn't being excused. She wasn't being shielded from responsibility. She was losing. The final judgment was brutal. She was ordered to pay for the full cost of my car. Thousands of dollars. She sputtered. "But I don't have that kind of money," the judge simply said. "Then you'll have to find a way to pay." And just like that, reality finally hit her. She turned to glare at me, but I didn't feel bad. Not one bit. She had gotten away with so much for so long. But this time, she messed with the wrong person. As I left the courtroom, my parents caught up with me. "This is too far, Mark," my dad hissed. "You're bankrupting your own sister." I stared at him, then let out a short laugh. "Good." Then I walked away. Lauren had never looked so defeated. For the first time in her life, she was truly facing the weight of her actions. No parents swooping in to save her. No easy way out. Just her, standing in the wreckage of her own mistakes, scrambling for a way to escape. But there was no escape. After the lawsuit, she tried everything to avoid paying me. She begged our parents to cover it, no luck. My dad was furious but refused to fork over the money. My mom, for all her enabling, simply didn't have it. Then she tried calling me. "Mark, come on. We can work something out," she pleaded. "I'll pay you back in time." "No." She sucked in a breath. I don't have the money right now. I can't afford this." I smiled coldly. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you stole my car." Then I hung up. After that, she tried to get other people involved. Suddenly, distant relatives were reaching out, telling me to be the bigger person. That I'd proven my point. I ignored them. Lauren needed to learn a lesson, and I was going to make sure she never forgot it. But the best part? The consequences didn't stop with me. Since she now had a theft charge on her record, getting a decent job became a nightmare. No one wanted to hire someone with a pending criminal case, especially not for anything that involved responsibility or trust. Her insurance rates skyrocketed, making it nearly impossible for her to afford a car of her own. And as for her social life? That took a hit too. Word spread about what she did, and suddenly, she wasn't getting the same invitations anymore. Her so-called friends weren't interested in dealing with drama and legal trouble. I didn't feel bad. Not even for a second. Because this was justice. For years, Lauren had walked all over everyone. She had lied, manipulated, and never faced a single consequence. But now she was the one suffering. Months passed, and I barely thought about her, until one day, I got a text. "Lauren, are you happy now? You ruined my life." I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. "Me no, Lauren. You ruined your life. I just made sure you didn't get away with it this time." There was no response. I sat back in my chair, exhaling slowly. For the first time in my life, I had stood my ground. And for the first time in her life, Lauren regretted something. Because in the end, I was right. She would regret this. Months passed, and life moved on. Lauren tried to reach out a few more times, each message dripping with bitterness. She wanted me to forgive and forget. To pretend none of this ever happened. But I didn't respond. Because I knew the truth, if I let her back in, she'd do it again. So I moved forward. I worked hard, saved up, and eventually bought a new car. One that only I had the keys to. As for Lauren, she finally learned that the world wouldn't always clean up her messes. And I learned that sometimes, the best thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences. And I never looked back.